What's going on, everybody? It is Overreaction Time once again. I'm your host, Simon Samano, and we are finally back for the first episode of 2025. Wow, I had not planned on being off more than a week. We should have been back earlier in the year, but guys, life happens. That's the way things go sometimes, but we are back, and we are back in the biggest of possible ways because look who I got with me. None other than the fabulous Farah Hannoun. Farah, what's good, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I'm excited to be back, fired up to recap all that's happened in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about coming off UFC 311 this past weekend, plus some other news and notes, and I don't want to waste any time. We've been off long enough. So let's jump right into this. Farah, you ready to go?
Ready to go. Let's do it.
All right. Kamikaze, you know what time it is. Hit it.
I mean, guys, what are you fucking... Is this tonight's stupid question night? Are you guys that fucking stupid? You can't be that fucking stupid. Who gives a shit? One of the dumbest things I've ever read in my life. Fucking common sense. Everybody knows that.
All right, Farah, we're going to start at the very top with UFC 311 and the main event. Wow, we were not expecting the main event to be what it was, but it was a crazy week where Arman Tsarukyan fell out at the very last minute, and stepped in Money Moicano, gave a valiant effort against Islam Makhachev, but ultimately the fight went the way we thought it would, with Islam Makhachev defeating Renato Moicano by submitting him in the first round. Afterwards, a lot of questions about what's going to happen next with Islam. When you look at the way things are with his career, with the state of the division, with some of the stuff that he said. So let me go ahead and hit you with this one here, Farah. Now is the perfect time for Islam Makhachev to leave the UFC lightweight division.
I disagree. I'm going to say this is an overreaction. I'm all for Islam Makhachev continuously defending his lightweight title. He just broke the record. He can stretch it out. I know there's going to be an asterisk around it because of the guys he's fought. Totally not his fault. I know people are going to be like, Volkanovski's a featherweight, so that's 2 title defenses over a featherweight. Moicano stepped in on short notice, number 10 ranked. I know people even talking about Dustin Poirier being over the hill because he's going to retire soon. I disagree with that, but I just want him to see, I want to see him defend his title more. When we talk about the greatest of all time, I know right now with him having broken the lightweight record, people are putting him as potentially the greatest lightweight. I think he can become one of the greatest of all time, period. And when we talk about GOATs, what we point out every single time, whether GSP, Jon Jones, Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson, is title defenses. But the new era of fighters are not defending their belts. They're jumping weight classes. They're vacating belts and stuff. If this is what we're pointing at every single time when it comes to the greatest of all time debate, right? Isn't that what people say about Khabib? Defended his belt 3 times, retired too early. I want to see Islam Makhachev. I feel like he has the ability to rule over lightweight for years and years. I want to see him do that. He said he won't fight Bilal. Bilal's a champion right now. I want to see him defend his belt again and again and again and stretch that record out, especially the 155 being, in a lot of people's eyes, the hardest or the toughest division out of all of them. So I just want to see him dominate, and I think he can.
Here's my issue, okay? And I know outside of Arman, which whatever you want to say, Dana White said afterwards that Arman's not going to get the title shot. So we can address that. But when you look at the state of the lightweight division, Farah, it's nothing but rematches ahead for Islam. I mean, that's what he's got in front of him. He's already beat Charles Oliveira. Justin Gaethje's not going to get, Justin Gaethje, I don't know. I don't think Justin Gaethje is going to get back to a title shot. Dustin Poirier. I mean, I just feel like the division right now at lightweight is sort of the oldest that it's been, and it's about to lose its luster, in my opinion. That's why I feel like now's the time, even if he doesn't have to vacate, I feel like some of the division needs to sort itself out. You even see Arman Tsarukyan saying that he would fight Charles Oliveira to figure out, getting the title shot back, right? Like earning it all over again. Okay, let that happen. Let him go up, because the way the timing is going to play out is that if Bilal and Shavkat are going to fight in maybe May or June coming out of Ramadan, well, guess what? October is the next date after that in Abu Dhabi. We know that. And if Shavkat were to win, if Shavkat were to beat Bilal, that's the fight I want to see, Islam against Shavkat.
100%. I'm not going to act like I wouldn't want to see that fight, but I'm just talking from the perspective, and it's not his problem that the lightweight division is the way that it is right now. I get it. If Dan Hooker beats Justin Gaethje, we saw what Islam did to Dan Hooker.
Saw that already. Saw that fight. Yeah.
I get that, but it's not his problem. Like, I just want to see him like continue ruling over. It's kind of like similar to, I guess, Demetrius Johnson's reign. Like, a lot of people play it down, like in terms of like, look who he's fought. This guy's this. It's not his problem. Like, he's at the top of the division. He's defending against, or Pantoja right now looking for guys and not being able to find because he's already beaten a lot of the guys. I just want to see him rule over like lightweight. Just stretch it out to 7, 8, 9, whatever he can, title defenses while the division plays out. I disagree with Dana White. I think Arman should be next. But I don't know if that's another topic for later. But I don't know. I just want to see him stick a lightweight. I get where you're coming from in terms of the excitement of the matchup. But for me, it's like I just finally want to see, like, he's the guy that I feel like could potentially do that, just dominate his division for years to come. I just want to see a fighter do that. Like, I admire Pantoja's approach. He looks like he wants to do that. I want to see his son do that.
No, I appreciate that. Listen, as somebody who will always who stands by George St. Pierre as the GOAT, yes, like you said earlier in the conversation here, we point to the title defenses, the streak, the dominating the division, the beating it, once or twice over, 3 times over sometimes, Anderson Silva, all those guys. I just feel like this lightweight division is just, we're heading into 2025 with the lightweight division. It's always been the glamour division. It's always been like, the one division we want to watch, but there's a lot of aging guys. There's a lot of guys that are aging out in those rankings. And unless we get a major shakeup, like me saying Paddy Pimblett's going to be top 5 by the end of the year on a previous episode of the show, I just feel like it's time for Islam. This is like the right time. But hey, we agree to disagree. It's all good. It's all good. And we'll see where this thing plays out. I will say just one last time with Islam. I love the fact that he doesn't necessarily call anybody out afterwards. He's like, just send me, in true Khabib style, just send me location, send me contract. It's not my job, and I appreciate that about him for sure. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay, let's talk about the UFC 311 co-main event, which saw Merab Dvalishvili win an incredible fight against Umar Nurmagomedov. It went all 5 rounds. It was super exciting. Dare I say it might have been the greatest wrestling match that we've seen in the UFC. I mean, just incredible takedowns, takedown defense, transitions on the ground. I mean, that was everything I thought it would be. Hell of a fight and a hell of a win for Merab. And let me go ahead and hit you with this, Fado, okay? Merab Dvalishvili is primed to remain the UFC bantamweight champion for all of 2025.
Not an overreaction. No. Because a lot of people looked at Umar Nurmagomedov as the guy. I picked Umar, I'm not going to lie.
He was the biggest challenge. He was the biggest challenge, right?
And listen, look, he did well. And Merab did what Merab does. He outlasted him. I think what's amazing about Merab is he just stays so calm and composed. I heard John Wood tell DC after the fight that, like, we kind of knew that we'll probably drop the first couple of rounds. He was banking on that. It's a risky game to play, to bank on someone gassing out, but that's exactly what happened. He pushed his pace. He was having fun in there. I thought he won the fight 3 rounds to 2. Listen, I don't know. Like, Umar for me was the guy because of the grappling that he could match it, and I felt like he had the edge in the striking, which he showed that early. But man, Merab's pace, his cardio, like, much respect to Merab. I just don't. I mean, if Sean O'Malley's next, looking at the landscape, Corey Sandhagen is an incredible fighter, but obviously we know what kind of game plan Merab would implement against him. Figueiredo's got to get back into the win column. Like, there are interesting challenges, but yeah, I don't think it's over.
But we've seen that fight too, though.
We've seen that fight, exactly. So not an overreaction. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he remained champion. That's another guy that I want to see stick to his division. He hasn't mentioned anything about double champ. I really hope he doesn't. That's a guy that can rule over for a while as well. And I think Umar can climb back up to a rematch, which I would think would be one of the more highly anticipated fights. So I don't think that's an overreaction at all.
Okay, so not an overreaction, we agree. But let me just ask you this question then, just to play a little devil's advocate. If Sean O'Malley is next, is there anything that what did you take away from the first fight that maybe Sean O'Malley could win the rematch? Is there anything that you could take away from that first fight?
No, because a lot of matchups, like, I understand he came in with an injury and he underwent surgery after. I mean, Merab didn't come in healthy. Umar broke his hand in the first round, like, they're fighters, right? Things happen. But Merab on paper does not have the striking edge over anybody from those top guys. Would you give him the striking edge over Corey Sandhagen? No. Davison Figueiredo? No. Piotr Jan? No. None of these guys. Umar? No. So it's like, he's not at an advantage there. That's not how he wins his fight. He's just relentless with his pace. It's his cardio. It's mixing things up. It's his grappling. It's his durability. I mean, outside of O'Malley catching him, which he did hurt him in round 5, but outside of O'Malley catching him, which I wouldn't say is impossible, but like the chances of it are just low, is the way I look at it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's still a tough battle for Sean O'Malley. I wouldn't rule him out 100%, but I would definitely put my money on Merab.
Wasn't it wild this past Saturday how the striking disadvantage really showed itself in those first 2 rounds against Umar? Like, it was pretty evident, and you saw the damage on his face too. I mean, it showed. The fact that he overcame that was just incredible.
Merab gets rocked, like he got rocked by Cejudo, he got rocked by Marlon Moraes. This is literally typical Merab fight. And everyone talked about how emotional Merab was leading up to him. My guys, Merab is emotional before every single fight. It doesn't matter. Like, it does not.
Well, but there was a lot of extra. But there was a lot of like extra disrespect going into this fight. That was a really big thing. Like, he went into the cage with a big chip on his shoulder. I understood it, like the disrespect coming from Umar, but the disrespect coming from the betting public in general. He was the underdog, from fans in general who thought Umar was going to be crowned. I mean, we've had people on the show who thought Umar was going to win this fight pretty easily. Like, there was a lot of disrespect. I understood why he had that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, but like once the cage door closes, it's never impacted him. Like, or if anything, it impacts him in a good way. But he's always angry, isn't he? Like, he's every lead up to every fight, he has a problem with something. So that's just who Merab is. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and we can't deny that he performs every single time.
Yeah, well, congratulations to Merab. Hell of a victory, and we'll see what comes for him next. But yeah, I think he gets through this year, and we're still talking about Merab being the champ at the end of the year. Is it 2 defenses? It's 3 defenses. We'll see, but I think we're talking about him as the champ at the end of the year. He may be fighter of the year consideration by the time we get to the end of 2025. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about one more fight from UFC 311, and that was between Jiri Prochazka and Jamahal Hill. Another freaking fantastic fight. I mean, an absolute scrap, an absolute wild encounter, the striking exchanges, and ultimately we got a finish in the 3rd round with Jiri stopping Jamahal by TKO. I thought it was an incredible performance. I thought it showed a lot. And let me go ahead and just tell you this about this fight. Okay, this is 2 parts now, Farah. 2 parts. Jiri Prochazka has new life as a UFC title contender, but it's over for Jamahal Hill. 2 parts.
Yes. Okay, let's address Jiri first. As long as Alex Pereira is champion, I just think Poatan is a bad matchup for Jiri Prochazka. I don't see any.
Not that one. Not the Jiri we saw on Saturday night. Not that Jiri.
I guess, but no. I just think that I just think that Pereira is a bad matchup for him. He's just a bad matchup for him. Like, I admire that Pereira in his interview with ESPN after said, "I'll give him the trilogy after Ankle Live." That's why I respect Pereira so much, because who would say that? Like, he defeated, Chama. He knocked out Prochazka twice convincingly. Like, I get the first fight, there was some grappling success from Prochazka's side, some pressure and stuff. But after what he did to him in the rematch, like, why would you even bother? Like, what do you even gain out of beating him a 3rd time, right? So I respect him a lot for saying, like, he'll fight him a 3rd time. But if I'm putting money on it, it's Pereira again. I just think he's a bad stylistic matchup for Jiri Prochazka. Granted, I will say that he looked a lot more defensively responsible against Jamahal Hill. He actually looked good A to Z for a change. And when I say that, I mean, like, look back to his UFC debut against Volkan Ozdemir. He was teeing off on him. Alexander Rakic was having a lot of success. Like, Jiri Prochazka just out-crazies people. He out-brawls people. That's how he used to win his fights in the UFC. But now he actually looked good A to Z. So,
right. He was in a zone. He was in a flow state. He was in a zone in this fight.
So, yeah, and he did talk about wanting to make improvements after the 2nd loss to Pereira. He said, I have to make those improvements. So much respect to him to actually show that off. And that takes me to Jamahal Hill. Yeah, I mean, just like I said, because I thought whoever wins, the other person was going to look good too, because it was going to be back and forth. And it was back and forth, but, Jiri just, Jamahal didn't look very good there. He's coming off of the knockout loss to Alex Pereira before that. I think it's going to be a bit of a climb for Jamahal Hill before he gets back into the title picture, just because I felt like Jiri looked good top to bottom. That was actually a very good performance by Jiri.
I just think mentally for Jamahal, I think he just has to be mentally defeated right now. I feel kind of bad for Jamahal Hill. The fact that he became the UFC light heavyweight champion and then lost it in a freak accident, without losing it, right? Like lost his opportunity to really show what he could be as a champion. And it just feels like, coming back from that injury, the Achilles or the knee, whatever it was, I feel like, the Achilles injury. I just feel like we just don't see this. We're not seeing the same guy, we're not seeing what he could have been as a champion. But mentally, though, this was the one. He needed to win this one. He needed to show something in this fight, especially after all the trash he talked leading up to it, which he addressed during the week as like, well, I'm trying to set up another fight with, with Pereira. And I get it. Like, cool, I get it. But you said a lot, man. And now coming out of that one, really kind of getting punched a lot, getting hit a lot, wearing the damage, getting knocked down in the end and finished in the end. Mentally, I just think it's really hard for him to come back. Final word to you, Farah?
Yeah, but let me say this. It's not the deepest of divisions, right? The fact that Jiri could be looking at the next title shot after Ankalaev should Pereira win should tell you that, because UFC 303 was in June. That was even that long ago, right? Yeah. And we're already talking about him being potentially next in line, because who else is there at 205 pounds? Just Ankalaev got a bit of a delayed title shot. But if Jiri is next in line for the winner of Ankalaev and Pereira, that just goes to show that literally things can change like that. So I don't think it's like a massive mountain for Jamahal Hill to climb. He does have the former champion label, which will always help him get big fights. There's Alexander Rakic out there. There are guys you can match him up and maybe one or two more wins, and he could be right back up there, depending on who's champion by the time if he gets there. So, yes, I do agree that mentally it's going to be a bit of a battle, but I don't think it's like more like a back of the line type of thing, because there aren't too many like.
What if the UFC decided that they wanted to give Carlos Ulberg a chance to prove himself as the next title challenger? Like a matchup against Jamahal Hill would be one of those fights potentially. I mean, do you think he fares well in a fight with Ulberg?
I mean, Ulberg is now is booked against Jan Blachowicz in London. If he wins, then I believe that I wouldn't be surprised if he leapfrogs Jiri Prochazka. And if Pereira wins, if Pereira wins, beats Ankalaev. But if Ankalaev beats Pereira, then maybe we could see the Ankalaev Jiri, depending on how Carlos Ulberg performs against Jan Blachowicz. But Jan Blachowicz is there in the mix as well. Remember, he gave Pereira the toughest fight, right? Welcomed him to light heavyweight. A fight that he thought he won. Wasn't exactly Powhatan style performance, right? Because he was just fending off takedowns and stuff like that. So anything could happen. But, it's basically those names that we just threw in the mix right now that are in contention.
All right. Well, we've got two guys going in different directions, and we'll see how they end up rebounding. All right, Farah. Moving on, things got a little interesting in the free agent world of mixed martial arts last week with news that Patricio Pitbull was finally, after calling for it, was released from his contract with the PFL. Also, recently in an interview with Mike Bond, Ali Abdelaziz, who represents Aaron Pico, said that Aaron Pico was about to become an unrestricted free agent. There's a negotiating period with PFL that is about to expire this week. After UFC 311, our very own Mike Bond, he asked Dana what he thought of those two fighters in particular coming to the UFC, and I want to go ahead and listen to what he had to say.
Patricio Pitbull, the longtime Bellator champion, got an unconditional release from PFL, and he says he badly wants to fight in the UFC. Are you interested in bringing him into the featherweight division?
I don't know. I'll talk to the boys about that, and we'll see where we're at.
Another one is Aaron Pico. Ali Abdelaziz said his exclusive negotiation window, I think, ends this week.
I definitely know the boys are interested in him. Yeah.
All right, Farah. So we just heard from Dana right there. Asked about Patricio coming to the UFC. It was more of like I don't know. We'll talk to the boys about it. The boys, I assume, being UFC execs, matchmakers, who they want to bring in. And with Pico, it was more like, well, I definitely know the boys are interested in him. We don't know what's going to happen with both these guys, but I'm going to hit you with this one, Farah. If the UFC signs only one of these guys, it should be Aaron Pico over Patricio Freire.
I'm going to say overreaction only because I wouldn't mind seeing both getting signed, because the UFC have kind of changed the way they do things, right? We saw them sign Michael Chandler. We saw them sign MVP, and they were up there in age. I mean, Patricio, in a lot of people's eyes, is probably the greatest Bellator fighter ever. He's obviously very skilled. He's Brazilian. It's a market that they could use him for. There are a lot of good challengers for him in the top 15. I'm sure a lot of the top 15 guys know who he is and would be interested in fighting him, especially the ones that may not be in the title picture right now. I know he's called out Volkanovski and a couple other guys, but no, I see value in him signing with the UFC as well. Like again, of course, it will depend on how much money he's asking for and if the UFC is willing to pay that. But I do see him being a marketable guy. His fighting style, again, I mentioned he's Brazilian. He's someone you can throw on the Brazil pay-per-views. I think he deserves a shot, especially now that if you asked me this question 5 years ago, or how long has it been since Michael Chandler got signed? 2020. So yeah, around 5-6 years ago. Maybe I would have told you, nah, no way the UFC would do it. But now seeing them sign Michael Chandler, seeing them sign MVP, I don't see why not. With Pico, definitely see where they're coming from. I think he's 28 or something like that. Obviously, with the American wrestling background, maybe he wasn't marketed the way people expected him to. I know he suffered a couple of losses early in his career, so the hype kind of died down a little bit. But we have to give credit to Bellator. They do a good job of building prospects. They have done that the whole time through. It's just Pico had those losses early. Maybe he doesn't have that personality that matches generally what a prospect would have, but neither does Peyton Talbot or any of those guys, right? So you don't have to be like a trash talker.
No.
Yeah.
No
but exactly. And he performs and he fights and he's entertaining and he takes guys out. So I see value in both. I don't know if that answers if it's an overreaction, underreaction. I see value in both.
But I was a hypothetical here, Farah. I said if they assign only one of them, it should be Aaron Pico over Patricio. If you could only pick one, would it be Patricio or would it be Aaron Pico?
It's a tough one because I can't do Patricio like that. Like he wants it bad. He wants to go. He should go. You can't. For me, that would kind of be like disrespecting him, especially like I said, after Chandler got signed, after MVP got signed. Why not? Like this guy is legit. He can fight. He's got the skills. He's got the resume. I definitely think Aaron Pico should be signed too. So I want to see both. I want to see both. Okay. I know Patricio.
I would like to see both too, but I just sort of feel like, the way Dana answered that question, and there was a time, if I'm not mistaken, there was a time where he was asked about Patricio. I think it was maybe a year ago or a little over a year ago. And remember when Dana kind of played dumb in a post-fight press conference where he was like, I don't know who that is. Like, I don't know who that is, and I'm sure he was playing dumb, but clearly there was something there where I don't know if he didn't like Pitbull or whatever it was, or if it was just supposed to be a dig at Bellator. I think the context of that question was like, oh, Patricio says he could beat Alexander Volkanovski, who was a champion at the time, right? But hey, now we could see that fight, and maybe he's interested. Maybe Dana's interested. I just feel like the answer with Pico though was very telling. Like he are definitely interested in him,
age,
and that's
100%.
happening. Yeah, well, we haven't seen the best of Aaron Pico yet either.
No, and maybe the UFC could bring out the best of Aaron Pico. You never know, right? Like he's still got potential. But I understand, like for the comparison I made earlier with Michael Chandler and MVP. MVP is obvious, like he's super entertaining. He brings eyes and stuff. Michael Chandler is good on the microphone. Maybe Patricio does not bring that, which is why he might not be a lure to the UFC. But I just think he's done enough in his career. People have always wanted to know how Bellator fighters would fare in the UFC, and a lot of people look at him as potentially the greatest Bellator fighter ever. So if you're looking at him like that, why not see him?
Well, they also looked at Michael Chandler that way before he showed up to the UFC, and he's 2-4, something like that, 2-5. So, but anyways, I'm not trying to disrespect Patricio either. I'm not trying to disrespect Pitbull, but like, yes, bring both those guys. I agree with you. Like that would be awesome. Bring both of them. It would definitely mix up the featherweight division. Patricio could even fight at lightweight if he wanted to, because he's done that before. I'm sure they both could go, either way. But I think if you're only going to pick one, I want to see Pico in the UFC more than I want to see. Like we're entering prime Pico territory. We're entering Patricio on the decline territory. So, that's the one I want to see if it's only going to be one of them. That's where I'm at. That's all, Farah.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. I wanted to talk about this when we were supposed to come back on the show a couple weeks ago, and that is the idea of Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. The latest thing, or the thing at the time that I wanted to talk about, was the fact that Joe Rogan had said that Jon Jones was asking for $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall. There was a lot that came out of that. I think ultimately Joe retracted that statement, said it was just a rumor and he didn't know who he heard it from. Apparently Dana had reached Dana. He got a phone call from a certain somebody. Anyway, I I thought $30 million was a fun figure, though, for us to work with here as far as whether or not it would happen. But let me just go ahead and hit you with this, Farah. There is no way that the UFC pays Jon Jones $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall.
I'll say it's not an overreaction because I feel like if it is true that he did ask for that, which it could be, because maybe if Dana White called Joe Rogan, it was more of a why did you say that rather than it's not true, who knows. But I feel like whatever Jon Jones throws out there, it's natural for the UFC to try to bring it a little bit down anyways. So whether it was 30, 25, whatever, that's what was going to happen, right? That's what happens in the negotiation period. And maybe it is true because now he called this the pound for pound #1. So maybe Jon did ask for 30 million. No, I'm kidding. But like,
oh, you think that might be why he called Islam pound for pound #1. See, he's no longer on his good side anymore. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, your prediction came true. No, but
yeah,
but
you remember.
I remember. But in all seriousness, like I mean, I don't know. I'm sure it's going to take a bit of time before this gets settled. Wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed all the way to November because it seems like Jones, November, MSG is always what ends up happening. So this could be a dragged out process for Tom Aspinall. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming Jon Jones is asking for a lot. He said FU money, right? So do we consider 30 million FU money? Yeah.
FU money, $30 million really would be FU money, but there's just no way. I mean, I think back to the whole thing I've said it before, with Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou like 5 years ago when they wanted to fight and they wanted more money. And that was a whole thing with Dana White and Jon Jones, right? And at the time, it was FU money was Deontay Wilder money. That Deontay Wilder money figure was in reference to the $30 million he had made for a fight with Tyson Fury. And if you recall, Jon Jones said he'd never made half of what Deontay Wilder has made. So if you do the math there, that means 6 years ago, Jon Jones was basically admitting that he'd never made more than $7.5 million for a UFC fight. There is no way they're paying anybody outside of maybe Conor McGregor, and I don't even know if that's the case with him. There's no way they're paying Jon Jones $30 million 5 years later for a fight. In fact, Jon Jones has probably only made about $40 or $50 million from the UFC in his entire career. So to get $30 million from one fight, yeah, I just don't see that happening. I mean, he deserves it. Apparently, according to Jon Jones, to Dana White, this is going to be the biggest fight in UFC history. He's already sold it to us as the biggest fight ever. So yeah, if you really believe that and you really believe it's going to sell a lot and it's going to make you a bunch of money, pay Jon Jones what he's worth. 30 million, I believe, is what he would be worth. And say maybe Tom Aspinall would be worth like $4 or $5 million or something like that. That sounds pretty good, but I don't even think those guys are going to get that much for this fight.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I don't think that's an overreaction. I don't think it comes close to 30 million. Obviously, there's pay-per-view points and all that other stuff, like money on the side, undisclosed stuff. But in terms of like flat or whatever, no, it would be, because it would just open a can of worms, right? If they pay Jon Jones 30 million, imagine what all the other fighters are going to be asking for moving forward.
Huge.
Yeah. So it's just I don't see the UFC doing that. I don't.
All right. Well, let's just hope they haven't hit a sticking point in their talks and their negotiations. But yeah, it may not happen until, I think we're hoping, right? The earliest would be International Fight Week. But you're right. This could drag out all the way to November. And that sucks because we really want to see that fight. And honestly, that only gets worse for Jon. He only gets older. He only gets slower. Like, this fight has to happen sooner than later if I'm Jon Jones. But hey, make sure you get your money, dude. I'll be on Jon Jones' side in this case. Make sure you get your money. So, all right. Okay, Farah, I want to talk about one last thing. And again, we were going to have a show last week, all right? But I was sick, so we're not able to have last week's show. So I wanted to go ahead and just talk about the main event from last week's UFC Fight Night 249 between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas, a rematch from 6 years ago. Mackenzie comes away with the win, impressive submission of Amanda Ribas. And so I just wanted to hit you with this one, Farah. Real simple, nothing crazy, all right? Mackenzie Dern's chances of being UFC champion are still alive.
Not an overreaction. I'll only say this.
But because you were wincing at first, though. You were wincing at first there.
Yeah, because I know Chael Sonnen hated this and he went crazy on her. It was the weirdest rant ever. But she said, like, she's not in a hurry. And I agree with her. I don't know why Chael Sonnen's going crazy. Like, I get it, marketability-wise, people will tune in if Mackenzie Dern gets a title shot. I'm not saying she deserves a title shot right now. But I don't know if she's ready. Like, the striking seriously needs to be polished up. I understand, obviously, her jiu-jitsu is amazing. Her wrestling needs to be polished up as well. She's a fighter. She's a dog. Like, she goes out there and she pushes a hard pace. She's been booked for several main events before, so she's trained for 5-round fights before. But this was obviously a very big and important win for her. But I don't hate that she said, I'm not in a rush right now. Like, I get it. If you want to fight for a title, you want to be ready. I don't think skill-wise she's ready to fight for a title right now. But if she's going to do the right things in the gym, I wouldn't rule out her. Like, I'll say this. I definitely think she's going to get a title shot at some point. Like, the marketability-wise, her popularity, she doesn't need to go on like a 7-fight win streak. Like, Mackenzie Dern.
But I think that could happen next then. Like, it could happen next. If you think about it, I mean, we've seen like Khalil Roundtree recently get a title shot, and he was the 8th ranked fighter. She's currently number 6 in the official rankings. Depending on what happens with Tatiana and Zhang Weili next month, it's not crazy to me that she could be next. I mean, the UFC probably, heck, if you're the UFC and you want to give her a chance, like, she's got back-to-back wins. Now's the good time. Why you want to put her in there again and potentially have another loss? Like, you can get her into a title shot now off of back-to-back wins.
Yeah, I wouldn't find it crazy. Like, for me, the way I look at it, like, stylistic for Zhang Weili, I would worry for her because of the striking. Like, her jiu-jitsu will always make her competitive, even if she gets out-grappled. Tatiana Suarez, on the other hand, like, her striking's not bad, but we know that she's going to take Mackenzie Dern down, and she'll probably have a lot of success doing it, but Mackenzie's jiu-jitsu will always make this an interesting fight. But the power that Zhang Weili packs, mixed with her, like, power in her hands, her strength, her grappling and stuff like that, like, for me, if you booked now, put in Mackenzie Dern instead of Tatiana Suarez, I wouldn't be surprised if Dern was a heavy, like, underdog.
Right.
Yeah.
Huge.
So that's
huge underdog.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. So I understand your point that if you book her another fight or two, that you might risk losing that opportunity for her to fight for a title. But I just don't think she's ready for it right now. But I will say that I 100% see her fighting for a UFC title before her career is over.
What I gather from that, Farah, is that Mackenzie Dern's best chances of getting a UFC title shot and maybe even winning the UFC title would be for Tatiana Suarez to go in there and beat Zhang Weili and then get a Tatiana Suarez Mackenzie Dern fight. That's the best matchup, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a matchup that will at least get people thinking like, oh, Dern's jiu-jitsu versus Tatiana Suarez's wrestling. But with Zhang Weili, I don't know if we're going to be having any kind of conversations about that. And that's no disrespect to Mackenzie, but like, I just feel like her striking needs to be polished up. Her grappling needs to be polished up, because I would assume that would be her game plan. She would want nothing to do with standing with Zhang Weili.
Thing is, we've been saying for the past, since she made her UFC debut for the past 6-7 years, that her striking needs to be polished up. And I just don't see it polishing up every time I see her in the cage. I mean, she's still throwing big winging punches. The head is down. She's not really looking at her target. You know, you see that a lot, right? We even saw it in this fight against Hibas. So it was like the fight needed to get to the ground. She just needs to go in there and just get the fight to the ground however she can. Let herself get taken down against somebody, whatever it's got to be. Like, that's her world. She just needs to fight from down there, fight from her back. You know, that's her world. Get the fight down to the mat. Those are her best chances, I think. Because, I don't know, Perillo's a good boxing coach, but clearly it's really hard to get it to click with Mackenzie Dern, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, like, I will give her this credit, because obviously she came into MMA, she came into the UFC as this jiu-jitsu ace. We've seen that with Chrome Gracie, but she's not Chrome Gracie. Like, she goes out there and she fights. She'll stand and bang with you. She'll grapple. She's not pulling guard at every second, right? So she's trying to round out herself.
Yeah, you're right.
And she's a tough girl. Like, she won't go down. Like, she'll get knocked down. She'll get back up. She'll push a pace for 25 minutes. So she's always kind of like a live dog, in my opinion, but definitely needs to maybe like work on the strength part that will help her grappling, help her get fights to the mat, or maybe pull a bit of an Aljamain Sterling style where you don't need to traditionally take someone down. You can just kind of latch onto them the way Aljamain Sterling does. It doesn't have to be your traditional double leg, although obviously he's a very capable wrestler as well. So just kind of like from a game plan standpoint, more if the skills aren't going to get there. But yeah, again, with her popularity, marketability, like, people tune into Mackenzie. The UFC have booked her numerous fight night main events. Wouldn't be surprised if she fought for a title soon.
Yeah, she's got to get a title shot. It's got to happen. But all right. All right, Farah. Well, the time for overreacting has come to an end, and quite frankly, I don't think I overreacted too much this week. Do you think I overreacted too much? Not really, right?
No, not really. No. Well, I was a bit bothered by the Islam going to welterweight. I don't like. I just like finally we can get a champion that's gonna dominate a division. We can actually put him in top 3, top 4 GOAT conversation. He's that good. Why not? Why not? Let's have a new person to include. Like Khabib was the new guy that we kind of. It was always Khabib and Jose Aldo were hovering around those 4 right names. But then everyone goes, yeah, but Khabib like didn't defend his title. He left the sport too early.
Well, he did, but you know, Islam did say though he can even fight 185 and beat Dricus du Plessis for the titles. Maybe he'll be the first 3 division champion. Hey, Alex Pereira, that's too much.
How many times have we heard people talk about triple? Like, just search the MMA Junkie archives, write 3 division champion. You'll find like 10 different fighters that said they will do it, and I guarantee you, no one came close. So
yeah. All right, Farah. Well, I appreciate you for welcoming us back to on Overreaction Time for 2025. Thank you very much. We'll have you back on the show again very soon. And for everybody who's tuned in this long, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. But we will be back next week for another edition of Overreaction Time. And until then, take it easy and so long.
MMA Junkie AI.